between the Central Intelligence Agency and the federal government and the global drug trade. Is that even conceivable to you? That's the issue. A book came out several years ago, I believe 1971, written by a fellow by the name of Alfred McCoy. Alfred McCoy spent 18 months in Southeast Asia in a place called the Golden Triangle. That's where Thailand and Laos and Burma converge. I think Burma is called something else now. To investigate the politics of the heroin trade. Then he wrote a book about it, Alfred McCoy did, called The Politics of Heroin in Southeast Asia. And he charged, among other things, that the Central Intelligence Agency was covering up the involvement of our Indo-Chinese allies in heroin trafficking and was itself participating in the transport of opium. Now, on June 12, 1972, prior to the publication of that book, McCoy testified about CIA complicity in Southeast Asian narcotics trade before Senator William Proxmire's Committee on Appropriations. Incensed by McCoy's accusation, the CIA publicly denied the allegations and then sought to censor the book prior to its release. The Central Intelligence Agency contacted McCoy's publisher, Harper & Row. They demanded a review of the galleys of the book. Over the author's objection, Harper & Row, the publishing company, acceded, but unconvinced by the CIA's rebuttal that portions of the book were totally false and distorted beyond recognition, they published the expose without any changes. Meanwhile, several members of Congress and the Washington Post backed McCoy in his claims, citing a cabinet-level report prepared by officials of the CIA and the State and Defense Departments that confirmed the thrust of McCoy's allegations. Now, this could not be more timely because right now, according to the State Department, there's a bumper opium crop that threatens America with a potential heroin epidemic. The Drug Enforcement Agency, in recent statements to the press, have alluded to the rise of heroin in the United States as being the drug of choice. The Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia is the region which is the #1 supplier of U.S. heroin. Thus, this book, The Politics of Heroin, is back out in a newly published paperback edition. The Politics of Heroin, CIA Complicity in the Global Drug Trade. Now, in addition to what I already said about the author, he is currently a professor of Southeast Asian history at the University of Wisconsin. He holds a bachelor's degree in European and Japanese history from Columbia, a master's degree in Asian studies from the University of California at Berkeley, and a PhD in history from Yale University. And he was recently the subject of an Inside Edition show on, I think that's on PBS, if I'm not mistaken. Or it's on one of somewhere. Our guest, he is now on the line, is Alfred W. McCoy of Wisconsin-Madison. Professor McCoy, how you doing?
Okay, Mr. Taylor, fine.
Good to have you on. Good to have you on. You were not, I don't know if you were on the line when I was giving the spin on this issue, but now that let me recap that. This book is being republished because of recent statements or to the effect that Southeast Asian opium and heroin is now the newest menace, quote unquote, in the United States as far as drug trafficking is concerned?
During the 1980s, what's heroin? The drug that had dominated America's illicit drug trade from the time we prohibited narcotics in 1914 right up to about 1980 disappeared from view. Heroin was like nowhere. It totally disappeared. Cocaine was everything. Books were on cocaine. Newspaper articles were on cocaine. Heroin came back. That's one reason for bringing out the book, because it deals with that drug. Secondly, and most importantly, is that the pattern of CIA complicity in the drug trade that was evidenced during the Vietnam War resurfaced during the 1980s preparation. So that I'd written that book first during the Vietnam War, exposing operation in that corner of the globe. It turned out that it's a pattern that's been characteristic of CIA covert operations around the globe in all drug zones throughout the 40 years of the Cold War.
Well, let me see if I can get this boiled down to some encapsulation for people who are just jumping in on this issue.
Sure.
Are you saying that the Central Intelligence Agency funds or helps fund various, quote, freedom fighters around the world, let's say in Vietnam, the so-called Hmong tribesmen and so forth, with illicit drug money?
No, I'm not saying
All right,
that.
what are you saying
The
there?
French intelligence did that, okay?
All right.
National Chinese intelligence did that. I mean, other intelligence agencies who have allied with drug lords have, in fact, profited from the trade and used it. The one thing the CIA did not suffer from was a shortage of money. They were not cash short, all right? So they didn't need the money, and they didn't do it. No, it's a much more subtle type of operations. Let me explain. When the CIA is sent abroad, the whole logic of its involvement in intervention in the world outside the United States is indirect operations. The CIA select allies and assets, non-communist allies and assets, to build them up in the fight against communism. That was its mission. Right now, the CIA complicity in the traffic operates, therefore, at several levels. First of all, it practiced what I called radical pragmatism. The CIA would ally with anyone and do anything that advanced its operations. So when it got into areas in which narcotics were a major commodity, and therefore the powers that could actually mobilize an apparatus for covert operations were in fact people involved in drugs or who became involved in drugs, the CIA didn't stand back. It allied with drug lords. Right? Once it had allied with the drug lords, the CIA did nothing to interfere with their involvement in traffic. Indeed, at another level of complicity, the CIA actually covered up for them. The CIA, by the fact of its operations, kept the Drug Enforcement Administration out of the drug zones. It gave its allies a kind of de facto immunity to investigation. And thirdly, and this is a much less, I think, common and much less significant aspect of CIA complicity. There are several instances. One that I in 1960s and early 1970s, the CIA was operating with a 30,000-man secret army made up largely of Hmong Hill tribesmen. Their main cash crop was opium, so the CIA, as a part of their alliance with this tribe, used its airline, Air America, to move the raw opium out of the villages into the market centers where it found its way into heroin labs, where it was the opium was transformed into heroin and shipped to South Vietnam, where about a third of U.S. combat forces fighting in South Vietnam were heroin addicts. But aside from that instance in Laos, the actual direct CIA involvement is not that significant. It's the indirect involvement.
All right. Well,
let me one thing here,
yeah.
okay? As far as the authenticity of this thing goes, okay? When my book first came out, the first edition came out in 1972, I testified in front of Senator William Proxmire's Senate Appropriations Committee. As a result of that testimony, the CIA Inspector General sent a major investigative team to look into these allegations. 4 years later, in the Church Committee's report on CIA assassination and all the things, that excerpts of that report finally surfaced from the CIA. And the CIA Inspector General denied that Air America had been carrying opium as a matter of policy. There's a little caveat there, of course. But more importantly, the CIA Inspector General's report corroborated that the agency had been allied with drug dealers in Laos. And that report said that the Vientiane station of the CIA should be placed under administrative oversight by CIA headquarters in Virginia because the CIA station in Vientiane did not appreciate the sensitivity of the drug issue. In short, the CIA investigated my charges and corroborated them privately. Publicly, of course, they tried to kill me. They did everything they could.
They literally kill you or figuratively kill you?
No, they actually, when I was in northern Laos, in a village, I was going house to house in an opium-producing village in northern Laos, a Hmong Hill tribe village. And I was asking over a period of 5 days, every farmer, how much opium do you grow? And they'd say 5 to 10 kilos. And when you grow it, what do you do with it? And they said, we take it over to the landing strip, and an Air America helicopter comes in, a guerrilla officer, not a local Hmong, but a Hmong from another village who's in, the CIA secret army, comes, gets off the helicopter, buys our opium, loads on the helicopter, and they fly it away. And where's the helicopter going? I say, well, we think it's going to Longcheng. That's where they say it's going, Longcheng being the CIA headquarters. I was conducting an investigation, and CIA mercenaries in another village ambushed me and tried to kill me. Fortunately, I had about 5 local Hmong militia with weapons, and we managed to shoot our way out of there. Later on, when I was down in the capital of Vientiane conducting inquiries, a man who was a refugee relief officer for the United States Agency for International Development, a humanitarian with the body of a linebacker, sat me down over a drink, threatened to murder my interpreter unless I stopped my inquiries. And so it went. they were not exactly supportive of my.
All right, this is in 1971.
71.
Now, this is 1991.
That's it.
We don't, at least we don't hear too much about propping up anti-communist thugs in Southeast Asia these days.
No,
so is this still relevant?
Pakistan. There is Pakistan. One of the great scandals of the 1980s, okay, bipartisan under President Carter, President Reagan, and President Bush, was the Pakistan-Afghanistan operation, okay? In 1979, as the Soviet Union invaded Pakistan in December of that year, beginning in May, as Soviet pressure on Afghanistan built up, President Carter ordered the CIA to provide arms and material support to the Mujahideen guerrillas. And the CIA station chief in Islamabad contacted Pakistan's inter-service intelligence, and together they mounted this operation, which ultimately delivered $2 billion in arms. Now, about half of those arms went to a man named Hekmatyar, a Islamic militant who was a long-time guerrilla operating inside Afghanistan with Pakistan intelligence. In May of last year, it finally came out, page 1 Washington Post, senior U.S. officials admit that Hekmatyar was a major drug dealer. Now, as a direct result of that operation, Pakistan was transformed from a minor producer of opium for local markets into the world's #1 producer of heroin. In 1979, when that operation got underway, 0% of America's heroin supply came from Pakistan. In 1981, the U.S. heroin addicts. 5 years later, they had 1,200,000 addicts. Now, that heroin was produced in heroin labs located inside Pakistan, along the border with Afghanistan, all under the control of Pakistan military intelligence. Many of those labs actually operated by CIA assets among the Mujahideen Afghani resistance. And during the 10 years of that heroin trade, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, which had 17 agents in the Pakistan capital, Islamabad, a very substantial contingent, that the DEA contingent did not make one arrest, did not participate in one arrest or one seizure of heroin during that 10-year period. They stayed away from the CIA.
Hang on a second. Alfred McCoy, author of Politics of Heroin, CIA Complicity in the Global Drug Trade. He is our guest, and I got a couple of things that I'd like to find out from you. Number one, do you believe this? Number two, if you do believe it, do you care? And I mean that honestly. I think there are some people that will hear this and say, I don't doubt it for a second, but it's the lesser of two evils. Or any question or other comment you may have for our guest, call now, 591-8900. The WLS Accurate Weather Forecast. Today, cloudy with showers and thunderstorms, 100% chance of rain tonight, 90% chance of showers. Low tonight, 65, high today, 75. Tomorrow.